guys, it's Emma and I'm back today for you with another video, and today I'm going to be doing one of my bookish yearly wrap-ups, okay? And this video is going to be me talking to y'all about the worst and the most disappointing books that I read this year, okay? These are the books whose badness and how disappointed I was by reading them, those feelings keep me up at night. They haunt me. Since I'm going to be talking about books that I thought were like the absolute worst, and you know, books that, you know, I thought kind of borderlined on that, I want to put a little disclaimer right here. I mean no hate whatsoever towards any people who like these books, to people who are fans of these authors. If you liked these books, that's awesome. Okay, you found something in it that I didn't. But personally, some of these books I'd run over with my car, if I'm gonna be completely honest, okay? Reading is subjective, my opinions are subjective, and let's just have fun and shit talk, okay? It's one of my favorite pastimes. So, before we actually get started, I would really, really appreciate it if you guys would look down in the description box for all the links there that I have for you guys pertaining to stuff going on in the world right now, and those links will be down there for you guys to interact with and to share. And then in the comment section, let me know whether or not you guys read these books this year, whether you disagree or agree with anything I have to say about these books, what books y'all thought were the worst books that y'all read during 2024, the works, right? So that being said, let's just get running into it. First in line, okay, is probably one of the most disappointing books I think I've read in maybe the past 5 years, all right, and that is Fevered Star. Now listen, as someone who worships, okay, the paper, and more specifically the trees that Black Sun came from, this is a disgrace. Deception, disgrace. The main thing that I have to say about this book is that Fevered Star suffers heavily, immensely, devastatingly from second book syndrome. This entire book is setup. That's it. It's almost nonsensical, really rushed, almost information overhaul, expositional world building, setting descriptions, and just build up. Like, that's what 90% of this book is. I genuinely think that this trilogy, alright, should have been a duology, and that Black Sun should have been extended a little bit more towards the end, and then the third book should have been extended a little bit more towards the beginning. The step down from its older sister that this book took is, it should honestly be studied. The English language has so many words. And even more words due to the fact that the English language is made up of multiple other languages. And yet, with all of that vernacular at my sheer disposal, I don't have the words to describe how angry Within These Walls made me. I may be biased on this first point, okay, but I thought this was going to be a cult book. You know, like the synopsis told me it was going to be, but no. It's actually a ghost haunted house possession story. And these are 3 tropes in horror that I despise. I don't like them. And the worst part about this book is not the fact that it uses these 3 tropes, all right, but it's the fact that it uses these 3 tropes and it uses them so generically. Of course, you have the whole thing where, oh my gosh, I thought I was alone. Why are doors closing in my house? Of course, you have the whole thing where it's like people being thrown to opposite sides of the room. It's just, it's boring, it's tired, and it's lame. And on top of it, okay, not revolving around a cult. In actuality, it actually revolves around this horrifically strained relationship between the guy and his daughter. And let me just tell y'all this, all right? If I was going to watch a horrific relationship between a parent and a child, where 9 times out of 10, the parent is the one that does something wrong, but they simply can't own up to it because they simply don't know how to talk to their own kid, I'd just go and watch an episode of Dance Moms. The book is predictable. It is so predictable, and it leads me into the ending. The ending is dog shit. I've read 3 Ania Ahlborn books at this point. This was my second, and the endings for all 3 of those books were the exact same. Everybody dies except for maybe one person. It's boring, and what did I say before? Say it with me, everybody. It's predictable, okay? It was just awful, and it wasn't made any better. The story or the pacing or the characters, none of this book was made any better by the fact that it reaches, I think, over 500 pages. In all the ways that you have me fucked up, this is one of them. Another book that was honestly one of the most disappointing reads of this year was A Fate Inked in Blood. My main problem with this book is that it had so much potential, and yet it focused almost all of its attention on the wrong thing. All right, this is a romantasy, and I firmly believe that when you write romantasy, all right, there has to be a balance between the romance aspect and the fantasy aspect. Otherwise, you're gonna have an underdeveloped book, and in my opinion, you should have just written either a fantasy book or a romance book, one of the two. This book focuses too much on the romance, and even with that focus, the romance is lackluster. All right, and with all of that being said, it leaves the fantasy aspect almost in the dust. Freya and Bjorn cannot make logical, rational decisions to save their lives. It's almost a little embarrassing. Which leads me to the romance itself. It's one of those romances where it's like, okay, yeah, no, we can't let anybody find out about our love. We have to keep our relationship secret. And then, they're not discreet about it, like, at all, and then they're, like, dumbstruck when people are like, oh yeah, girl, we knew about it, like, 5 months into it. And it's like, girl, why are y'all surprised? Okay, when all of y'all were on the mountain, the two of y'all were dry humping each other in front of everybody. This isn't exactly Scooby-Doo here. The bodyguard thing, in my opinion, was really lackluster, and you're probably looking at me like I've grown a third arm out of my head, okay? Because you're probably like, Emma, you didn't like a bodyguard thing? No, I did not. I know, alert the media. But Bjorn being the bodyguard, first of all, the only thing that this man could say was, like, maybe slightly reworded variations of, I'll protect you and I'll be at your side, even if it takes us to Valhalla. Like, girl, come up with something new. It's one of those things where the bodyguard thing was honestly tainted by Freya. Freya, unfortunately, is written to be like one of those stereotypical, strong, independent female characters who doesn't need a man, and yet, coincidentally, hates anything feminine, because apparently if you're a strong, independent woman, you simply cannot, you're not allowed to like anything feminine. I don't know, I don't make the rules. But she's one of those characters where she like disregards valid safety concerns because she's like, no, I can take care of myself. She can't. And then she'll storm off, and then she'll get captured, and then guess what happens, everybody? That's right, she needs to be saved. By whom? A man. I remember in a review that I saw, somebody said that Freya wanted to be like Lagertha from Vikings so badly, and I can't disagree. Okay, Freya could never be Lagertha. Lagertha would never. The fantasy aspect in this book was left in the dust. And it's unfortunate because the fantasy aspects in this book were so cool. The magic system, it's cool. We only got crumbs of it. I wanted to know more. Honestly, I was confused about it the whole damn time. All right, because what we did get about it wasn't really well explained. Second of all, this is literally a Norse-inspired land. How do you mess that up? There is so much material there, and this book had so much potential to finally be a romantasy book that I actually had some interest in, all right? That was actually decent for me, which honestly, I'm begging the universe at this point. Please. Please. I just want one romantasy book that I like. I just want one. I thought this was gonna be it. But, lo and behold, it wasn't. Ariadne. Y'all thought I got pissed with Within These Walls?
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Ariadne got on every single nerve that I had, and even on nerves that I didn't know that I had. I'm getting kind of tired, okay, of these seemingly copy and paste Greek myth retellings, all right, from a feminist lens that actually, the more feminist they try to be, the more misogynistic they are. Your characters, Pasiphae is blamed for something that Poseidon does to her. So, great. Phaedra's character is assassinated because apparently women can't do stuff. They have stuff happen to them. So her agency is completely ripped away from her. And we want to talk about someone whose agency is ripped away from them. Girl, Ariadne is passive and a doormat. All right. The writing in this book, in my opinion, the language that it uses sexualizes the trauma and the mistreatment of women by gods and men. All right, which goes against what I thought was the theme of the book. Okay, I thought the theme of the book was supposed to be women are collateral damage of gods and men, of the actions taken by gods and men. So I guess we just threw that out the window. Just with that theme in mind, the angrier I got as I got through this book, okay, particularly with how this book handles Poseidon and Zeus and Hera. Pasiphae is a victim, and yet, once again, Poseidon is almost always left out of the equation. Okay, and then Zeus is never mentioned violating women. He's always mentioned having trysts with women, okay? Meanwhile, Hera, okay? Hera's the scary one. Hera's the one hiding under your bed like the damn boogeyman waiting to get you. I'm not gonna sit here and say that Hera is Woman of the Year. She's not. Simply put, she's not. However, simply put, Hera is not on the same level as Zeus and Poseidon, all right? I honestly kind of had to laugh when I saw that, of course you're villainizing Hera. What Greek myth retelling can breathe without villainizing Hera? All right, this book, whatever the hell it was trying to do, didn't do it. Very much missed the mark. All right, these next two books I'm going to talk about together because they are both two contemporary romance books that I quite frankly hated with my whole soul. Those two books are Throttled and The Roommate. We're going to play a series of games, okay? First game is try to write a male love interest that isn't a walking red flag. Because in Throttled, Noah, whenever he does anything bad to Maya, which is often, he makes up for it by not apologizing, but instead barraging her with kisses and seduction, which I'm not a therapist, I don't have a doctorate for that, but I'm pretty sure that's manipulation. All right, also, there's one sentence in here where he's like, I like a compliant Maya is my favorite Maya.
Brother,
Also, just his POVs are rotten with the male gaze. It's gross. All right, he fully grossed me out as a male character. And then Josh in this book, all right, it's just fucking mean. He constantly resents Clara's like comfy upbringing and comfy background and constantly brings it up in their arguments and constantly spits it back in her face. All right. So yeah, both of these books suck at that game. And now we're gonna play a second game, all right? And that second game is titled, Try and Write a Female Love Interest or a Female Main Character that is not completely insufferable and doesn't make me completely hate myself as a woman. Okay? Let's try that. Because both of these books suck at that game too. All right, Maya in here is she's so annoying. She's shocked, okay, when Noah, who's constantly told her throughout the book that he's a bad person, he's a person she doesn't want to date, he's an asshole, he's a douchebag, yada yada yada, immediately goes and sleeps with another woman right after she rejects him, and she's shocked by that. Girl, I don't know what to tell you, okay? She's also constantly embarrassed by the fact that people keep walking in on them having sex when they finally do get together, and girl, all I have to tell you is maybe stop having sex where y'all work. Just a suggestion, okay? Maybe stop having sex where, you know, the people that actually work there work. How about that? She's just written so stereotypically because she's Spanish, okay? That's one of my main gripes with this book is that it's supposed to be written in 2020. It feels like it's written in 2014. That's not a good thing. You know those people that go to Spain, all right, and they're not native Spanish speakers. They come back after like having a vacation there, studying abroad, whatever. They come back and they have an accent. And it's like, oh yeah, no, I loved Barcelona. And it's so, like, the TH is so drawn out, and it's like, oh, girl, you're trying so hard. That's what Maya felt like to me, okay? She's Spanish, okay? So, obviously, she's tan. They're never gonna let you forget that. She's Spanish, so of course she loves Barcelona. She's Spanish, so of course she drinks sangria every day. She's Spanish, so of course she eats paella every day. And then Clara in here, okay? I get it, all right? I get some people don't like to cuss. I get some people don't like talking about explicit stuff, be it sexual or anything else like that. I get that, okay? Clara is one of those people. And while I get it, I start to look at you a little weird when you can't say basic anatomy without blushing. This book is telling me that you're 27, okay? And yet you can't say the word vagina without blushing. All I gotta tell you is grow up, baby doll. Like what? Do you blush when you put your bra on? That's, okay. And then the final game that we're gonna play, which I just hinted at, all right, is called Try and Write Characters that you claim are pushing 30 that actually act like they're pushing 30. Because all of these characters are supposed to be in their 20s, late 20s, whatever, right? And yet they all act like petty little high schoolers. I don't get the appeal, personally. Another one of the most disappointing books that I read this year, all right, was Snikt. And I loved the art. I thought the story was great. I thought the characters were great. It's just, you know, oh, judging from Exhibit A, I'm sure you can see why this is just the tiniest bit disappointing. Oh, look at this. An actual piece of the binding fell out. Gotta love that. The story was great, the characters were great, the art was gorgeous. But I guess I now have to start looking to make sure that there aren't any reviews talking about binding issues. Didn't know that was a thing I had to look out for. All right, another one of the most disappointing books that I read this year was The Phoenix Keeper. All right, look, first of all, I hated Isla. I hated the main character so much. Her attitude pissed me the hell off. And then she's just unnecessarily judgmental at points, as particularly with Luciana, who's supposed to be her rival to Lover. All right, with Luciana, she constantly calls her the witch, unprompted, and among judging her for a lot of other stuff, particularly she judges her for, God forbid, having manicured nails on the job. I know, it's a crime.
They have a warrant for your arrest. You're going to jail.
And then third of all, there's just something about how Isla treated the other animals who, God forbid, weren't phoenixes, okay? Because she's the Phoenix Keeper, she loves phoenixes, she's loved them ever since she was a kid, and I applaud her for her ambition and her drive and her determination to make a better world for these animals. However, there was almost a certain feeling towards the other animals under her care who, God forbid, weren't born with wings and feathers. Do you remember that third game that we were playing with the romance books where it's try and write characters that you claim are pushing 30 that actually act like they're pushing 30? Girl, most of, if not all of these characters acted like petty little high schoolers talking about some gossip in the damn cafeteria. This book is full of cringe dialogue, which is mostly made up of forced funny, all right? I despise it, okay? If you can't write natural wit, don't do it. And the whole thing with the rivals to lovers was honestly a little laughable, okay? Because, look, I remember I was reading some of the reviews because I needed some camaraderie in the moment, and somebody said it perfectly. You calling someone your mortal enemy in a pretty much one-sided rivalry that stemmed from a misunderstanding literal years ago is a little ridiculous, okay? And the whole thing that bridges them together and makes them go from rivals to lovers is Isla's epiphany of, you don't know what other people are going through.
This is the first time in my life that I've been provoked to hit a woman.
That would be understandable if these characters weren't pushing 30. You're telling me you're in your mid-20s and you haven't come upon that realization yet? This book also tries to do world building, but in actuality, it's just a large chunk of expositional information overhaul, really. I remember at one point, I just checked out and I just didn't read it because I was like, this is too much all at one point, and I'll dog ear it, and if it comes back into play later in the story, I'll go back and read it so that way I can understand it and then keep reading, you know what I mean? But it never did. So this whole thing of, oh yeah, no, these animals come from this continent, where this continent is east from this continent, and this continent is west from that continent, and the continent over there is northwest from this continent. It's like, what? I honestly think that part would have been aided so much more had she included not only the map of the zoo, but also a map of all the continents that you're trying to so hurriedly describe to all of us. All right, otherwise, this book seems a little bit too long, a little bit too clunky, and honestly a little bit too slow. Next, we have Lucy Undying. All right, this is another one of the most disappointing books that I read this year. Okay, look, I loved Lucy as a character. I honestly wish she'd been the only one with a POV, because everybody else really isn't well developed. Iris is the only one that comes even a little bit close, and even then her entire dialogue is just full of cringe and like stuff that is supposed to be like relatably funny. It's not. Dracula as a villain in here is inconsequential and cartoonish. Lucy, as much as I loved her, there are historical fiction aspects in here, and it seems that in order to make her character look as badass as possible, she's essentially plopped into various historical events to like gain experience or whatever. At one point, Lucy is learning how to fight, and she tells us, we don't see her, she tells us that she learned how to fight in however many days, and she learned how to fight efficiently and skillfully enough to take down vampires eons older and more skilled than her. What? And then she magically ends World War I just like that by essentially telling the leaders of the countries involved at the time, what you guys are doing is bad. You need to shake hands and make up, or else. And then she leaves. And then she's like, I ended World War I. And I'm like, this book tries to make Lucy's character look so formidable, when in actuality, we don't see any growth to actually merit that title. All right. Also, the writing is probably one of the most annoying things about this book. It's so heavy-handed. It's so in your face. You're not allowed to come to your own conclusions. The book makes them for you. It essentially thinks you're stupid. All right. At least that's how it comes off. But I gotta say, all of that, I was actually having a damn good time with this book. I was thoroughly enjoying it. And then the final third part of it reared its ugly little head and was like, hey, so how would it be if I just ruined this book for you? And girl, she did. This book should have cut out at least 150, maybe even 100 pages, and this book would have been fine. Okay, because the final third of this book is too long, which makes it too slow, which makes it a slog to read. All right, and it does not help whatsoever that the plot gets so convoluted towards the end of this book. This book needed some serious editing. All right, it's too long for the story it's trying to tell. It damn near shoots itself in the foot with how long it is and how much it tries to do at one time. This book was just, unfortunately, a disaster. We want to talk about disappointing reads. Ooh, I have one to talk about, okay? And that is A Soul to Keep. Listen, for the first 80% of this book, I was thriving. All right? This was smut that I'd never seen before in my life, and that's saying something, okay? I was thoroughly enjoying my time. I was having a blast. I thought the story was great. I liked the characters. I liked their relationship. And then we get to essentially like the climax of the story, where we meet Katerina. Katerina was one of the first girls that Orpheus took as a bride, and so she was with him at probably some of his most primal days, all right? And she was terrified of him. As much as I agree with Rhea, that girl, woo-hoo! At the same time, he's 7 foot tall, he's got fur, he's got claws like meat hooks, all right, and he's got a skull for a face. I'm not really blaming the lady for being scared shitless here. Katerina, her whole thing is that she hated being with Orpheus. She was terrified of him the whole time. She essentially placated him and played along the entire time until she could find a way to escape. Orpheus didn't know about her feelings. Katerina's experience and her whole character, essentially, with all of that in mind, is watered down to the idea of her just being the crazy ex-girlfriend who hates the male love interest for no reason. And when Rhea and her finally meet, all right, and Katerina's like, I know, he's terrifying, isn't he? But don't worry, I've saved you. He'll never touch you again. You know what I mean? Because that's her experience of him. Meanwhile, Rhea's is completely different, and that's fine. However, once again, with Katerina's whole character and experience being watered down to that, all right, Rhea's cherry on top is essentially, you know, being like, oh, well, why didn't you just say no? I ought to smack the shit out of you. That put such a bad taste in my mouth. Okay, I hated how that was handled. I wish, honestly, that Katerina hadn't even been a character in the book, so that way, hopefully the author could have found some other way to come up with, like, an antagonist or something like that, but that was such a bad way to do it. Look, I was so disappointed because I wanted to like it, and I did like the first 80% of it until the last 20% of it decided to murder it with that weird victim blaming thing. And so I bought the second book because I'm hoping that it'll be different, okay? But if it's not, no, a story like this with a plot point like that dwelling in my home, not where I lay my head at night. And then lastly, this one's gonna be kind of short, okay? But a very disappointing book that I read this year that I actually DNF'd, okay, is My Minotaur Husband. All right, I was having the time of my life, okay? because the human female love interest and the Minotaur male love interest were about to meet, and she's seeing him walking through the door, and we're getting her point of view, and she's describing him. She's talking about, oh yeah, no, he's so tall, he's so strong, like his biceps are huge, he's got horns. I think he had like a one of those bull nose rings or whatever. And I'm sitting here, girl, y'all would have had to freeze me off of him like a wart off a knuckle. And then, unfortunately, I was sucker punched, quite literally, by her overemphasizing the size difference between her and him. Look, that is one of my main pet peeves with romance books now, all right? And it doesn't matter the subgenre. You overemphasizing a size difference between your couple is it's a slippery slope, okay? Because you have one person saying, oh yeah, no, they're so much bigger than me. They're 3 times my height. They have to like kneel down to kiss me. Oh my gosh, they could pick me up with one arm. The overemphasized size difference, like I said, is such a slippery slope, because now with all of that, okay, and some of that may have been exaggerated, I don't care, you get my meaning. There's a possibility that I'm no longer thinking of a really short person with a really tall person. I'm now thinking of a kid and their parent. Which, I don't know about y'all, but that's not something that I really want to be thinking about, especially when there are smutty scenes in it. I will get down on my hands and knees. I'll lay down flat on my stomach if that's what it takes for romance authors to please stop putting in such an overemphasized size difference. It gets weird. So you guys, those were all of the worst and most disappointing books that I read in the year 2024. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope this could serve as like a little point of camaraderie, all right? Because I know me, when I don't like a book and I see a lot of other people like a book, I kind of get a little, oh, well, you know, am I the problem? But no. Okay, so if you didn't like any of these books, all right, so you guys, with that being said, I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you continue to look out for more stuff on my channel. I hope that you guys are staying safe, and lastly, I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.